Let's say I want to get up to speed on a topic like vector databases, which are super important in AI. I don't really want to read right now. What I want to do is work out my brain while I'm working out my body because summer's coming and I know I'm going to need to look good. How do I do this? Well, Google has a product called NotebookLM that actually will take in information and even generate custom podcasts for you. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to firstly click on the blue button to create a new notebook. Now, if you notice, NotebookLM wants you to give it sources. Unlike ChatGPT, which has a bunch of sources and it decides what to use to give you an answer, NotebookLM wants you to decide what you trust so it can then provide information based off of that, severely cutting down hallucinations and misdirection. So I've prepared a couple of PDFs, some scholarly documents on vector databases. I'm going to add these in. And then I found a great website. So I can also add in content from a website by pressing add source, click on the website link, paste the URL. If this is an allowable source, you'll see it has a nice check mark. Okay, so now NotebookLM has begun to synthesize this information. In the middle, you can kind of see its overview of what's been provided. There's 4 sources, that makes sense. Here's the content, that makes sense. Now, if I just wanted a podcast, over here on the right in the studio section, I could press generate, and it will go ahead and create a podcast based off of this information. Now, I can also refine this down below. There's a few suggested questions, so let's just accept the second one here. What are the key challenges and opportunities in applying LLMs with vector databases? We'll take that. Let's see what it comes up with. Now, notice all along it cited its references. So if I hover over this, I can see where it got this specific information. Now, if I really cared a lot, I would do extra validation here. But because this is a demo, we're going to just trust that AI knows what it's doing. So now I'm going to go over here to the studio section and press generate. This is going to create the custom audio in podcast format so that I can listen to this information and learn as I go.
A few moments later.
And there we have our 10-minute and 42-second custom podcast on the topic. So let's play a little bit of this so we can get an idea of what it's like.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a deep dive into some of the most interesting topics out there in the world of data and AI.
And today, we're diving headfirst into the world of vector databases.
Vector databases, exactly. And, this is a topic that's been generating a lot of buzz lately, especially if you're following, all the developments in AI.
It's really
Level 2 is to use some of the additional capabilities. For example, I can check this briefing doc. A briefing doc is a summary of the information that we provided. So let's take a look at what it generates. If I click this, you can actually see here are the topics, and it's broken down into a certain level of detail. I might use this to refresh my information, or maybe I want to read this before I listen to the podcast so some of the ideas stick. Down below, you can see it selected a number of quotes from the research information and put these down here so we can, once again, tie what's being produced with the original sources. Additionally, you can create a study guide. This study guide has a quiz, an answer key, essay format questions, and also a glossary of key terms. This could be super useful to review to make sure that A, we're not mixing content in our heads, and B, that we actually understand the material that we're looking at. So I can see going through my audio material, skimming the briefing doc, and going over the glossary as sort of a minimum step to make sure that I'm retaining the right information. There's an FAQ generator. It's generated a number of frequently asked questions from our body of research. It's given us 8. If you notice at the bottom, we can convert any of these to sources. So if we want to feed this back into the system and have it continue to evolve the audio or the materials it's making, that's completely doable. And then lastly, there's this timeline capability. And if you're giving it information that's timeline related, this is probably going to be better than if you've just given it research articles like I have. Notice here, the timeline is inconsistent in how it's organized. It does have a nice cast of characters. Now, that's level 2. Level 3 is if you look at your briefing doc and realize that it's not as comprehensive as you would like, we can now add additional sources. Let's take a look at that. If I press add source, I can grab, let's say, a nice authoritative YouTube video, paste that link in here. And what it will do is pull the text transcript and run that through the process. So let's give it a moment to chew over it. And if I click on this, you can see what it has gleaned. Here, in fact, is the transcript along with the summary. So then I can ask this to regenerate. Generate. And now what's going to happen is it'll be based on my new set of information and give me a different audio, but in a very similar style. So if you remember, the previous video was about 10 and a half minutes.
A few moments later.
And there's my podcast. As you can see, this has gotten substantially longer because we've added more material. It's now clocking at 28 and a half minutes. So why don't we go ahead and play a quick sample?
Sure. Imagine you're working at, I don't know, let's say a software company, right? And you have this AI assistant that can answer questions about your internal processes. With R, this AI can actually search through all your company documentation, which is stored as
All right, so let's download this. We're going to give it a quick download, and then I will also download the study guides, the briefing doc, the FAQ, and the timeline. And I will add these into the description, into a link in the description, so you can actually see exactly what was generated. Now, NotebookLM isn't for everyone. You have to have a Google account, but most of you probably do. And if you do, you have access to NotebookLM at some level. They also have a premium plan that gives you more usage, some collaboration features, and so on. Additionally, they have big plans to roll out more features as the product evolves. But think of NotebookLM as your private synthesizer of knowledge and distiller into usable formats. So if you're in a field like mine where you're constantly learning, it can really be helpful to take known good information and then distill it down into bite-sized chunks. We're seeing this take off more and more in a university context, and with features like this, it's easy to see why. Not only can you constrain the LLM to specific vetted information, but it distills it down into very helpful formats to help the learning process. So who has access to use NotebookLM? Well, you probably do. If you have a Google account, you probably have access to a version of NotebookLM right now. If you're in a university setting or part of Google Workspace, it can be dependent upon your administrator to enable this. There's a free version, and then there's a premium version that has more features, more usage, and collaboration capabilities. So that's NotebookLM. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next video.